Welcome to Know Your Body. I'm Dr. Andrew Wong, alongside our Director of Functional Nutrition at Capital Integrative Health, Araceli Benavides. At our practice, Capital Integrative Health, we take a deep dive into understanding your body and giving you actionable steps to organically give you the healthy life that you deserve. Today, let's discuss intermittent fasting, which is a favorite topic of both of ours, and what that is, what is intermittent fasting, and just as importantly, what it is not, plus how intermittent fasting can help you achieve wellness in your life.
Yes, this is definitely a fun topic since we both have personal experiences with many different kinds of fasting. So, yes, we can probably start by explaining a little more about intermittent fasting. Although this is it has been like a trending topic in the last years, and it sounds for many like a little bit new. It's something that human beings have been doing for a very long time, especially like our ancestors would go through like longer periods of time without eating when of course we didn't have like the supermarkets and food was like so readily available. But basically intermittent fasting, it's around like giving your body a break for like 12 to like 16 hours, like typically overnight of a fasting window, and then having like around like an 8 hour, depending on like how long your fast will be. If you're fasting 12 hours, you would be having like an eating window of like 12 hours, or if you're fasting like 16 hours, you'll have like an 8 hour window of like eating. So we'll talk about like how does this like benefit our body, right? Like why do we do this, or like why it could be helpful for some patients.
Araceli, it's funny as we're talking, I was also thinking about how if we zoomed back to the Paleolithic times, and a lot of these topics seem complicated and they seem really recent, but if we zoom back to the Paleolithic times and we kind of were talking to our ancestors about, hey, we're doing some intermittent fasting. Hey, this is so great. It's so cool. It's so new. They would probably look at us and laugh. They would say, we've been doing this for millions of years already.
Right, exactly. Yes, and really, like the intermittent fasting is a topic that it's like not a one size fits all. Like patients really can do it, and people in general can do it in so many different ways. And I've had patients that really like, let's say a 16-hour like fast really works very well for them. They feel more clear, they have more energy, they feel really well. And in other cases, they might just feel like way too hungry and that it's like too long and that it's hard for them to do. So there's many different ways to do it. You could even start, and especially if you're someone that hasn't like fasted at all, like starting with a 12-hour window overnight is a good place to start, like 12 hours of fasting overnight, and then three main meals. That could be like a good starting point without snacking, and we'll talk about why. But it could also go like starting to extend it a little more from like 12 to like 13, 14, 15, or 16 hours like overnight as you like get more into fasting, like trying fasting if this is something that you want to try. Or there's even more like extended fasting, like fasting like 24 hours like once a week, or like doing more like extended fasting. So there's definitely like different types and ways to do it.
I feel like we're selling what you're saying also is that intermittent fasting, there's no one size fits all.
Absolutely.
Every body is different
Mm-hmm.
in terms of how we can, respond, optimally to fasting or not. In fact, it's not cookie cutter.
Mm-hmm.
Cookies that no pun intended.
Yeah.
Sometimes, those gluten-free chocolate chip cookies are really good. But some people are also, and we'll talk about this later in the episode, but some people are not great candidates for intermittent fasting either.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like everyone should fast or everyone should do 16 or 8.
Absolutely. Yes.
Back to the chocolate chips in a minute, but yeah. So when we come back, we'll discuss the actionable steps we'll take together to help you understand how to properly implement intermittent fasting in your routine. This is Know Your Body. Welcome back to Know Your Body. I'm Dr. Andrew Wong, alongside our Director of Functional Nutrition at Capital Integrative Health, Araceli Benavides. Earlier, we discussed what intermittent fasting is, and now let's talk about how to implement intermittent fasting into your own life. So, Araceli, who can benefit from intermittent fasting? Someone's listening to this and like, how is this relevant to my health?
Yes, absolutely. Intermittent fasting can have so many different benefits, from like metabolic health, that can include like weight and blood sugar regulation, like blood pressure, from like also like liver health and like gut health. So like it can have a many like benefits. So maybe we can start discussing a little more in depth around like the metabolic benefits, because really intermittent fasting we also like to call it like a metabolic like workout. We're getting more like we're getting more metabolically flexible. And what this means is that most of the time when we're like consistently eating throughout the day, and we're also like eating carbs like over and over, our body's like relying on glucose for energy. So we're not really using much like fat as energy when we're like constantly eating and when we're having like our glucose elevated throughout the day. So when we fast, we allow our body to reset. We allow our blood sugar to drop. Therefore, also insulin levels can go down, and that allows our body to start using fat as energy. And that's where we can see benefits around like blood sugar regulation for patients that maybe have like diabetes or pre-diabetes, insulin resistance, or even want to help like their weight and their weight management. When our insulin, as I mentioned, is low, we use more fat as energy, and that can also help like weight management. So really our metabolism becomes a lot more flexible. It's easy for our body to use carbs as energy and then use fat as energy. And that really, that metabolically flexibility can help like our whole like metabolic health, as I mentioned, around weight, blood sugar. It can help cholesterol levels. So really can have a lot of great benefits on the metabolism.
And the way and the efficiency at which we can utilize that energy, and that's what we call metabolism, is how efficient can we be at burning that energy, whether that's carbohydrates or fats, like you said. That's going to determine our health because we don't get the nutrients in our cells effectively, we won't have the energy to process and have optimal health.
Yes, and typically when we're running on this like carbohydrate dependent track, and we tend to be more hungry more often. We tend to be hungry within like an hour or two after we ate. But when we're like using more like fat as energy, or when our body's more metabolically flexible, we typically can go like 3, 4 hours like in between our meals without feeling the need to eat. And that's why, like I was mentioning earlier, when we do like let's say an overnight fast of 12 hours and then we're doing like 3 meals, we don't want to be snacking in between to allow our blood sugar and our insulin to like reset and go down, so that we're not consistently elevating our blood sugar levels. And if we're doing the right combination and we're balancing our meals correctly with like protein and veggies and like healthy fats, we should our body should be able to stay without feeling hungry for like at least 3 hours in between those meals.
So now I'm going to get into the some of the details, some of the personal
Yeah.
kind of things. So we talked about, metabolic flexibility, not snacking, and things like that. What about if someone has a party or they're watching a sport, game day or the birthday party or celebration? How do people manage that sort of in a practical way in terms of intermittent fasting? There's something coming up. You're going to eat a lot of food. You're going to drink a lot of drinks even.
Mhm.
How does someone manage that?
You mean like before they go to that event, or like after that
Either
event?
way, before or after.
Yeah, I definitely, one of the things that I tell my patients around this is that you don't have to do it exactly the same every time. So even if you have the like 12-hour window or 16-hour window, you don't have to like always do it at exactly the same time. So like you can shift it earlier or you can shift it later to like accommodate if you have like certain occasions that you like have to attend to. And definitely once you do go to like an event or a party, you can like help manage the impact that those foods are going to have on your metabolism and on your health, especially if you do like little hacks, like for example, having like vegetables first before you eat something sweet, or if you like do some like movement afterwards to like help compensate to like what you're having.
Got it. So you also mentioned tracks, which gives me an excuse to give the train analogy that I like to use. So talked about these three macronutrients, proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. Proteins being used mostly for general cellular and metabolic function and to build muscle. But then carbohydrates and fats being the two macronutrients that, as you said, are the ones that are mostly metabolized for energy. And but imagine now, I want you to close your eyes if you're not driving, listening to this. And if you are, just imagine that you are a train passenger and you're trying to board two types of trains. You can choose the fat burning train or the carb burning train. And really, it sounds like metabolic flexibility is you can board either one and be okay.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
when we do that and we have that flexibility, it also helps our energy
Hmm.
be more stable. We don't like crash as much, right? When we're depending on those carbs and then our blood sugar drops too low, we might be very like fatigued and kind of not feeling great, more irritable. So yeah, that flexibility of being able to board either train like helps to feel better.
So we need to jump to the other train for energy. We can do that if we're more flexible. And I think the corollary of that is that, at least in our society, 80 to 90%, this was a study that was done at the University of North Carolina, public health study showing that 80 to 90% of the population is metabolically inflexible, like metabolically rusty.
Mm-hmm.
They are not flexible, where they're dependent on carbohydrates for burning energy, and they can't burn fat. And so they gain fat, they gain what is called insulin resistance, they gain weight, and then that increases inflammation and health problems.
Yes.
Intermittent fasting is really broadly applicable to at least 80 to 90% of the population. If you're listening, there's a 8 to 9 out of 10 chance that this is going to be really relevant for you.
Absolutely. And another area that can really benefit from fasting is gut health, because really when we're not eating for 3 hours in a row, our migrating motor complex, or MMC, gets activated. And this is kind of like the housekeeping in our digestive tract, just kind of when our digestive tract contracts to like push through any like waste products, any like undigested food particles, anything that has remained in our digestive tract that really needs to just get eliminated through the stools. So if we're like constantly eating, we're interrupting this process. But if we're giving our body like breaks of at least 3 hours in between our meals, and if especially if we don't like go to bed with our like stomach full, so if we like give the fasting overnight as well, and if we don't eat for about like 2 to 3 hours before we go to bed, we allow our body to go through those like cleaning mechanisms that our body has for digestion. And we can also talk for the brain, because it also has a lot of like benefits for the brain as well. But it allows those cycles of cleaning in our digestive tract to happen while we sleep, and that can be really helpful, especially if you struggle with any like digestive issues like gas, bloating, irregular bowel movements, any like IBS or IBD. All of that can like fasting can really help with that as well.
So it sounds like cleaning our gut out, cleaning our brain out. We need fasting. We need the ability of our body to rest. So we talk about, in the last episode on gut brain connection, rest and digest.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to rest, eat the food in a very, peaceful way, ideally, a balanced way. But then you have to give your body a chance to digest, which means you have to have a time that you're not eating, and that's fasting.
Absolutely.
The other thing I wanted to mention about fasting is that, and I say this a lot with patients too, is that this is my understanding anyway, is that the body doesn't really know the difference between eating one bite of an apple versus eating a turkey meal at a Thanksgiving meal, like a huge meal. Is that to the body, both of them increases insulin, increases digestive enzymes, increasing that digestive machinery, and increasing inflammation also, whether or not that's a very small, bite of a snack, or whether that's a huge holiday meal.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so when we're like fasting and these processes like happening, especially overnight, as we were mentioning, like our body can like clean up like our digestive tract and also like our brain, right, Dr. Wong? There's like certain like mechanisms that we eliminate any like plaques that have been like forming, and allows our body to detox as well. So like a lot of like detox processes to eliminate toxins also happen while we sleep, and especially when our body's not focused on digestion. So we don't want to go to bed with like a after we ate, because our body's going to be trying to digest instead of doing like these other like processes around detox and like brain restoration and like memories and all of that while we're sleeping, if our body is like fasting.
So I think, Araceli, you're saying that food coma phenomenon of eating a big meal and then kind of falling asleep on the couch or in the bed, that's probably not a good thing for our brain.
Absolutely.
So intermittent fasting is helpful for fatty liver, for helping with reducing cholesterol, reducing blood sugar, helping with heart health, helping with brain health, helping with that brain fog that often sometimes we get. It even fights glucose-dependent cancer cells. Let's talk about how intermittent fasting can help with potentially reduction of cancer incidence.
Yes, and this really we see a lot the benefit when we do more like extended fasting, and especially when we go like autophagy is like a process that our body, like when there's food not coming in, our body needs to like basically go through a process that is called autophagy, where like cells that are like damaged and or like basically old in a way, they get like eliminated out, they die and they get eliminated out of our body. So these kind of like regeneration in our body can be really helpful for like even patients with like cancer. So when autophagy becomes activated is when we go like 18 to 20 hours without eating. So they become a little more extended fasting windows. And definitely we recommend, if you want to try like extended fasting, to do it with your like healthcare practitioner. But yeah, definitely these like autophagy and like apoptosis, which is like the dying of the like cells that are damaged, can be like really helpful to eliminate any like potential like cancer cells that should be eliminated out of our system.
And there's also this balance between basically cell buildup or cell growth and then cell breakdown or autophagy, like you
Mhm.
said, which is, molecularly is something called AMPK,
Mhm.
um, adenosine monophosphate kinase. And then on the one hand, that's going to be activated with intermittent fasting. But then when eating a lot of food, especially with, insulin containing foods, et cetera, or insulin producing foods, then you get what's called an mTOR, mammalian targeted rapamycin type of, protein or receptor essentially that is being activated. So you want to have a balance between what's called AMPK and mTOR, and that is done or achieved by that's achieving a balance between feasting and fasting, essentially.
Yes, I will tell a personal story that I've tried like an extended fast of like 5 days with like
Wow.
water fast, which I don't know if I would be able to do it again, but I would definitely say that your body takes about like 48 to 72 hours to like transition from like glucose and like carb burning to like fast fat burning. And that's a period of time where you feel you're like worst in a way. Like it takes your body a while to adjust, but once you're out that like 48 hour to 72 hour like window, when you're like doing an extended fast, is when you start to like feel your best. And a lot of the times it's not necessarily recommended to do water fast for that long of a period. I just wanted to like give it a try. Typically it's more like 3 day like water fast when patients do water fasts for like autophagy. But definitely like drinking a lot of water or even like electrolytes to like help rebalance can help manage those like symptoms of like feeling. You might get like even sensations of like getting a flu when you're transitioning from like carb burning to like fat burning. So your body just kind of like feels off for a little bit. And then your mind is like so much clearer. Like you can think, brain fog is like gone. Then you feel like very energetic. I remember even like being fasting and wanting to do like a spinning class. And I was like crazy. And like I hadn't eaten in 3 days. And I was like, wow, this feels like kind of crazy. But it's just kind of your body going through like a totally different kind of like fuelless energy, right? I was like more like that fat burning, and
Yeah.
really your body
Yeah.
can feel very different.
Burning the ketones and
Yes.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you've done what's called basically a fasting marathon. Yeah. Basically. I've done a 24-hour fast before. I think at that point I'm starting to get lightheaded. I'm starting to get a little bit weak. I'm like ready to eat some food again. But I've also done fasting for personally, like trying to lose some weight. I gained some weight during COVID. I gained some weight in my previous practice when myself and a bunch of coworkers, we started eating Chipotle all the time, which for me, produced weight gain. And, I think having this kind of a low carb diet sometimes was helpful, but sometimes it wasn't enough to achieve my health goals of trying to be more metabolically flexible. So then I added on some intermittent fasting, some 16 hours of not eating or 16 hours of fasting, essentially, which means water, which means black coffee is okay, which means herbal tea is okay, but no sugar, no additives, no food for 16 hours, and then 8 hours of an eating window. And that seemed to be pretty helpful for me. For the most part, in a long-term way. But I wanted to talk about also, and we can talk about this when we come back, is, who shouldn't be fasting or,
Mm-hmm.
when do we not want to fast? So when we come back, we'll have some final thoughts and routines that help you understand how to properly implement intermittent fasting to your health regimen if it is right, in fact, right for you. This is Know Your Body. Welcome back to Know Your Body. I'm Dr. Andrew Wong, alongside our Director of Functional Nutrition at Capital Integrative Health, Araceli Benavides. Earlier, we discussed intermittent fasting, how to implement it into your life, and then the health benefits of intermittent fasting. We also talked about extended fasting, which results in autophagy. And now we want to talk about who should avoid fasting. In other words, for whom fasting is not necessarily appropriate. Because, like we said before, it's not a cookie cutter type of health plan. It's not like everyone should do fasting or everyone should do a certain plan. So, Araceli, who should avoid fasting or who should discuss with their healthcare practitioner in terms of should they fast or not?
Yes, definitely. If you've been experiencing like chronic fatigue, or if you have been diagnosed with adrenal insufficiency, that would be definitely a consideration to avoid fasting, because really our adrenal glands, like through like cortisol, helps to regulate and maintain our blood sugar while we're fasting. So we still like, we don't want to go like fasting extended periods of time and then our glucose like dropping too low. And part of like what helps to maintain our blood sugar stable while we're fasting is our adrenal glands. So if that's like not working properly, then we definitely don't want to do fasting, and especially if you're already feeling like fatigued, we don't want this to like worsen like the fatigue if your body's not able to regulate blood sugar properly.
So it sounds like people with chronic fatigue or just general life stress that they might not need to add another potentially, stressful physical situation onto their system. They might not be able to tolerate it at that time. They might be better off waiting until their life's a little more balanced before they get into that intermittent fasting.
Yes, absolutely. And definitely if someone has a history or either a history or active um, eating disorder or disordered eating, we don't recommend this because it can become like too much over time. So that would be definitely a consideration.
So, it's quite a few conditions, and I think we really want to talk about, some of the main take-home points for today on, this topic of intermittent fasting, which is really relevant for 80 to 90% of the population that's metabolically inflexible. So we want to increase our metabolic flexibility to increase our ability to nourish our bodies with getting the energy in efficiently to our cells, and we do that by increasing our metabolic flexibility. And one of the key ways to do that is actually intermittent fasting, which, as we said in the beginning, our ancestors have been doing for millions of years anyway. We're just calling it intermittent fasting. This is a new, but yet old topic. So number one is to really start slowly, is to start where you're at, meet you where you're at, give yourself some grace and compassion. This is the maybe the first time, if you're listening to this, the first time you're doing this, you might just be starting to get into the intermittent fasting world. So go slowly. It might just be something like 12 hours on, 12 hours off. It might be like just removing some of the snacks first and just doing the 3 meals and just eating regularly and not really fasting, but maybe stopping that late night snack or stopping that late night drink, things like that. That's going to move the needle quite a bit for you, even, surprisingly so. Even that little one change might allow your metabolism to activate much more efficiently than you would have anticipated, even with that one small change. So start slowly, start where you're at, and kind of go from there and get on that metabolic train so you can get healthier. Number two is supporting your stress level, supporting your adrenal glands. We know that if you're not in the optimal condition, whether you're pregnant, whether you're chronically fatigued, whether you have a history of an active or personal history of an eating disorder, whether if you're a child, that's growing, that you don't want to limit your nutrient status. If there's different other conditions that might be, contributing to excess stress right now in your life, this is not a time to intermittent fast. Again, intermittent fasting is not a cookie cutter type of plan. And number three, I would just say is to ramp this up, in a controlled and a gradual manner. I would utilize and I would talk to your healthcare practitioners, functional medicine practitioners, et cetera, that are really knowledgeable about intermittent fasting. So you can do this both safely and effectively.
Um,
So thank you so much for joining us on Know Your Body. We'll be back next week and every week to talk about your health and how you can achieve the body, mind, and spirit that you want and deserve. If you want to learn more about Capital Integrative Health, please check out our website at cihealth.org. Again, that's cihealth.org. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.